Not I.
All right, if y'all are ready here, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, my name is Phil Daniel. I want to welcome everyone who's able to join us online for our meeting today. We have two of our board members in here, as well as a couple of the election staff. Our director, Janine, is here, is one of those people. And we have our other board members are online here with us in this virtual meeting. And our first, I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. And our first item that we have here is the public comment time, where we give 5 minutes per speaker. And there's a sign-up link on our website, I believe, for anybody that wanted to try to come in and comment on this. And this is new to all of us in this virtual world here. And Fred Aiken, our vice chairman, is here with us also. So at this time, if you have public comment, do we have any list?
We had one person that signed up, Monica Delancey.
Okay.
And I do not see her on here unless she's got a different ID.
Is Monica Delancey available?
Monica, if you could unmute yourself if you're there.
Checking again for Monica Delancey. You will need to unmute yourself if you are on with us to make a public comment. All right, don't have her, so she was the only person signed up?
That's correct.
Okay, we'll continue on then. And our regular business here is the approval of minutes. And we've had some past meetings where normally we would approve the minutes in the next meeting that we had. And we had some difficulties due to this virus situation. So we have today our minutes from February the 10th and from March the 13th and from March the 26th. Do I need to go over any of these, or do you think we ought to just assume everyone has read those?
This is Jessica. I said I have read over them.
Okay, good. Well, we've had them all available to the board members and also online available to us too since not last Tuesday, I think, or Thursday, I think. So do I hear a motion about approving these minutes?
So moved.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second. All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think that's everybody that's present. All right, and then next I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Elections, Janine Eveler, and she will speak about our current elections operational status.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if this works and y'all can see me. I don't know if I'm going to be on there. Okay, so I'm going to go over just a little bit about this election, first of all, just in case there is anybody that is at all confused about what we're doing. So June 9th, 2020, we're conducting actually 3 different types of elections. We have the presidential preference primary that was originally scheduled for March 24th, and after 2 postponements, it's now being held on June 9th. If you voted in this primary back in March, your vote is secure and waiting to be counted, and you will not vote in this presidential primary again a second time. Then we're also doing the general primary, which was originally May 19th and was also postponed to June 9th. The general primary is used by the parties to nominate candidates to appear on the November ballot for every office that's up this year. So these offices may include U.S. Congress, Georgia General Assembly, and local races like commissioner. And everyone is eligible to vote in the general primary. The November ballot is where the nominated party candidates go against each other and any libertarian or independent candidates. That is where we would actually elect the winner. The third election type that we're conducting all on this same day is the nonpartisan general election. And this is where we elect the judicial offices, all the way from local state court judges to the Georgia Supreme Court justices. The judicial nonpartisan election is always held on the same date as the general primary. So it also was postponed along with the general primary. So that's where we are today for the 3 types of elections that we're conducting on that date. Now, as most of you know, you will have to select a ballot when you apply for an absentee ballot or when you go in to vote in person. And we have the Democratic, the Republican, and the nonpartisan ballot. If you select a party ballot, it will include the presidential preference primary race if you have not already voted in that race in the early voting that was suspended in March. If you already voted in March, the ballot will just include the general primary races. The nonpartisan ballot, people get a little confused about that one. We do have to offer a nonpartisan ballot that is just the judges for anyone that does not want to select a partisan ballot. So that, again, just has the judges' races. So I just start out that as just an overview because there are some members of the public that have asked us these questions about the different types of ballots. So I wanted to give that overview. Okay, so where are we right now? We have processed a little over 123,000 absentee ballot applications. And we have a little over 12,000 ballots that are returned for the June 9th election, primary and election. They're coming in, you know, a bunch every day. So we're still holding on to about 16,000 ballots from the presidential primary in March. And again, those will be counted on the June 9th tabulating day. A little bit about in-person voting, which is coming up starting on May 18th. We expect that the in-person wait times for both early voting and at the polling places on election day will be impacted by social distancing and sanitation procedures. We have had to reduce the number of locations and hours for advanced voting. We had anticipated we would be opening 10 locations, including this main office, but we reduced that to 5 locations. And the hours were going to be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and they're now going to be 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And most of that was due to the fact that we just couldn't staff all of those locations. We've had a number of people who have not been comfortable working under these conditions. So this is really all that we could offer. We will be spacing out the voters and the equipment when we have the in-person polling places so that the equipment is 6 feet apart and voters waiting in line are 6 feet from each other. We'll be limiting the number of people in the polling place so that we can comply with the CDC guidelines. So people have to exit the polling place before new people can come in. The poll workers will be provided with masks and gloves, and they will have hand sanitizer and cleaning spray or cleaning wipes for surfaces. Voters are asked to please wear masks if they're voting in person, and each voter will receive a stylus to use for voting. The stylus and voter cards will be cleaned between voters. We will also offer just a tissue, kind of low-tech option that the voter can either use their own or use the one we're offering to hold on to the voter card so that they aren't touching the voter card or the stylus. So those are the measures that we're going to be using for in-person voting. We do anticipate there will be lines. So we are encouraging voters in all of our media outreach efforts to apply for an absentee ballot. There's still plenty of time to apply, and applications were sent out, but if you don't have the one that you were sent, they are available on our website for download. If you don't know how to download it, just give us a call and we will mail you one. So voters can check the status of their absentee ballot application and their ballot once they send in the application on the My Voter page. It shows the date the application was received by us and the issue date. The issue date is when we've completed our work with the application and the mailing vendor has been okay to go ahead and mail the ballot. So looking at some of the statistics that have come out, it looks like it's taking the mail vendor, the state's vendor, to mail out the ballots approximately 3 business days from the issue date. So again, looking at MVP, you'll see the application receive date, which is when we got it. The issue date is when we completed our work with it. And that's when that evening the state runs a report and sends it to the vendor who's going to mail the ballots. And so it is taking them, looks like around 3 business days to get those into the U.S. Postal Service. They do have tracking codes on them. So if anybody is just wondering where their ballot is and it hasn't been received in, say, a week from the issue date, they can contact us and we will see if we can find out where that ballot is. Okay, so absentee ballots can be returned by mail and they can be dropped off or hand delivered. As most of you may have heard, we do have 4 ballot drop boxes that we've installed around the county. Those are in the South Cobb and East Cobb Government Service Centers, the North Cobb Regional Library, and here at our main office. So those are drop locations. A hand delivery of a completed ballot can also be given to an early voting poll manager. So once we open up the early voting locations, you can also drop it off to one of those poll managers. The state has contracted with the vendor, as I said earlier, to print the ballots, to print the envelopes, and to mail the ballots. I think, Phil, you wanted to discuss about the envelopes. And
Yes.
We did have some information out on our website about the inner envelope. I don't know if you want to show that. Is
Yes.
actually, go ahead.
What I'd like to do is to show my experience. I applied directly to the elections office in March to get an absentee ballot. I called first to get an application. They sent me the application out. I mailed it in on March 21st, and then on April the 30th, I received my actual ballot. This is the outside envelope. Inside the outside envelope was these instructions about how to do this. And also there was this piece of paper that is not an envelope, but it is a folded piece of paper. It's official absentee ballot must be enclosed. This caused some confusion, and I've received some phone calls and contacts about this, because if you read the instructions differ. They say that there's a smaller white envelope inside, and you're to put your ballot inside the white envelope. But unfortunately, there was a mix-up somehow in that. So these instructions are not exactly 100% correct there. What you do is take your ballot, and this is my actual ballot right here. You take your ballot, you get it completed, and then you can just put it inside this. And then this is the outer envelope that they send you to mail it back in. And you would insert that in here. You would fill out the information like your name and so forth on here. And then mail it. Then, as Dean said, you can put a postage stamp on it and put it in your U.S. mail, your mailbox out the end of the driveway or in your subdivision or whatever, or the 4 locations that she mentioned. Now, one of the locations she mentioned was the South Cobb Government Center. And for those who may not be familiar, that's where there's the fire station and the police station together on Austell Road in the South Cobb area. So there's a box located there, as well as these other 3 locations that she mentioned.
Right, and the main thing that people should be understanding about the envelopes, we will count the ballot. If it's not in the sleeve, if it's in the sleeve, if it's, taped into that, be sure that if you tape the inner sleeve closed, that you don't damage the ballot. Make sure that the tape is not on the ballot. But what we're looking for when we're validating absentee ballots is that the signature on the oath matches that is in the voter registration record and the absentee ballot application. So that's why that's on the outside of the envelope with the yellow stripe. So once we have validated that signature, then the ballot is counted. The the sleeve or the inner envelope is used only for privacy, so that when we are opening the outer envelope, we are putting the sleeve and the ballot in one tray and the envelope with the name on it in a second tray, so that they're no longer together. But if you did not put it in the sleeve, the ballot would go in that tray without the sleeve, and it's separate from your name at that point. So it is only for preserving the privacy of the voter's vote.
I'll mention one other thing. I've noticed on mine, and I asked Janine about it, there at the top there is a tab here that is kind of fixed where you can tear it off, and it says please remove stub before returning your ballot. Has a little QR code on here, and I think it gives information about your precinct or whatever. This is just something you can tear off and have and before you mail it back in. But I think she said it gets counted anyway if you do leave it home, so don't worry about it. But that's what it's for. That was a question I had, and others may have that question as well.
Yeah, I believe that is just something that the printer is using to make sure that they put the right ballot into the ballot packet that they're sending out. So they're scanning the code to more quickly put together the ballot packet and then sending that off to the voter. If, like you said, Phil, if it comes back to us and it still has its stub on it, we would just tear that off and then scan the ballot.
Right. It will fit in the envelope either way because of the way it's folded, so
right.
It won't matter there.
Like I said, the only thing that we're looking for is that the signatures match, and people will be contacted if there is a mismatch or a perceived mismatch, and the voters do have the opportunity to cure that situation. So there really isn't anything that you could do to the ballot and how you return it that would cause us not to count it, as long as the signature is on the oath envelope on the outside.
Janine, did you have more to your presentation? Because I wanted to back up to the ballot application process.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I see that there already is a question that is posted, and it's one of the questions that I had concerning that. On our chat, there is a backlog in processing applications. What is the time between submitting the applications? And I guess it's more, this question is probably more about the rate, backlogged applications that we're able to process, since you've explained what the process is getting it to the vendor and what the vendor is telling us about putting the ballots.
Right. So we are turning out around the applications that we're receiving within 1, maybe 2 days. We do have some that are problem ones that we're still working with the voter to correct the information. We have some that are elderly and disabled, where we're having to make copies so that we have their application for the rest of the elections this year. So we're changing that process to get those out sooner and then make the copies. There was some misunderstanding with my staff about that process. So that is getting turned around. We're, like I said, just about on the same day or the next day. But again, it's this mailing process. The way it's working is when we enter an application, we put an issue date in the system, and then that night the file gets sent to the vendor, and then they start working on it. They are not on the same day. They're more in the 3 days window to get it into the mail system. So that is my understanding of the turnaround time.
Janine, I have a question for the CDC guidelines. You just said that we're going to be asking voters to wear their masks. Is that something that's going to be enforced, or can people come? Let's say they forget their mask at home. Can they still vote?
Yes. We cannot add any requirements to voters that they would have to comply with in order to vote. So we would ask that they wear a mask. We, as far as I know at this point, are not providing masks, although that may change. But we would ask that people wear the mask that they currently use to go to the grocery store or whatever. But yeah, but we would not say that they can't vote or anything like that.
Okay. And for the people listening and watching, could you please go over those three Dropbox locations again? You said the North Cobb Regional Library, the South Cobb Government Center.
The East Cobb Government Service Center, and then the main office here at Whitlock.
All right. Thank you.
Janine, I still have, I guess, a question about what voters need to do if they have made application for the ballot and it's taken 3 or 4 weeks from that time, and they perhaps checked the Secretary of State's website and looked up their names on the Excel spreadsheet that's available. They still are not received their ballots. What process would you like for them to follow?
Each one is different. So if they are looking at an MVP and they're seeing that there's no application received, then it sounds like we didn't receive the application at all if it's been a while. If there's a receive date but there's no issue date, then it's in our hands, and they should call us and find out, you know, where the delay is and what we're waiting on. And then if there's a receive date and an issue date, then it's out of our hands and it's been sent to the vendor. And so again, if they're looking at the issue date and it's been longer than 3, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, and that would be like their process plus the mail, you know, that's probably a week. So I would look at, you know, contacting us if you don't receive it a week after the issue date.
Okay, but I guess that what you were saying is to contact us, call or email.
Right. Yes. Either call or email. That's really the only way that, you know, we have the information. We'll figure it out for the voter.
Which email address? I understand this is confusion.
They're both going to the same location.
Okay.
Yeah, both email addresses. The info@cobbelections.org is usually for just general information, but we had to forward all of those emails to the absentee group because they published that email address on the application,
Okay.
on the state application.
And where is that vendor located that is mailing out those ballots? It take time to go from their state to ours.
Right. The mail ballot vendor is in Arizona.
So we have to consider that time is going to take from getting U.S. mail, regular mail, and get from Arizona to Georgia.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Now, I have asked the state if we get into closer to the election, if we should be issuing these ballots, because there seems to be more of a delay in the actual getting it to the vendor and having them mail it. But I haven't gotten any answer on that. So, you know, we're not at that point yet, but at some point we're going to be in a very short time frame, and it might be quicker for us to mail it from here. I'll keep you posted on that.
Okay, good.
That really was all that I have on my notes, but what other questions do the board members have?
I have several other questions. I hope that people are kind of keeping up with what's happening on our website. I'm getting phone calls and questions, of course, from voters, and some of them have to do with the ballots, about the concern about not getting the ballot before the 9th, or whether ballots would be accepted after, if the state has made provisions for accepting ballots after 7 o'clock on election day, and you know, or if they're postmarked. And then the whole question about what our process will be, whether they want to vote in person after they have already requested and received their ballot, and that's during early voting or advanced voting, as well as on election day. And then what will the process be if they have not received their ballot?
That was like 4 questions.
I know, but I felt like you could handle that, because you know.
We take them one at a time.
But the first question is, what if they don't receive their ballot?
Okay, so again, if they've applied for the ballot and they've checked MVP and it appears that it is lost somewhere, that the time frame it doesn't seem right for them to have applied for it and not have an issue date, or have an issue date and it's been longer than a week. They can contact our office and we'll find out what has happened to the ballot.
I may mention, if I may, I mailed my application in, once I got my application from Cobb County, I mailed it in to the office on March the 21st. And I did not receive my ballot until April the 20th. So that gives you a little idea how long it took with just that process. And with all the flood of applications we've got, it may be taking long.
Well, at the beginning, it took longer. At the beginning, we had a rush of applications. We had a backlog at the beginning, but we've gone through the backlog, right? We've gone through the backlog. We're now on a daily or next day turnaround for us to enter it and issue it to the state's vendor. So it shouldn't be, several weeks like you've experienced if they apply now.
Okay.
So if they have applied quite a bit ago, like several weeks ago or whatever, then they can contact our office and we'll find out what happened to it.
All right, we'll go to Jessica's next question there. She got.
I'm going to have to backtrack. I'll try to ask one at a time. I guess the first question I have chronologically is where we are concerning, well, that's one question, where we are concerning our backlog, and when we might, and I know that depends on when we get applications, but we have a rough number.
Well, so our backlog right now is really just the elderly and disabled, which is about 8,000 that the staff was not issuing first. They were making copies first. So we've turned that around so that they will make copies after they issue it. So we're going through those 8,000. But other than that, there's just a daily turnaround. So the ones we're receiving about 3,000 or 4,000 each day, and we can process those in a day. Okay. The ones that are coming in now should turn around fairly quickly.
Okay, I think that answers perhaps all of my questions about the application process, and then the questions begin about what if you don't receive your ballot, and has the state communicated anything about any extensions in any way?
Okay, so if you don't receive your ballot, if you've checked with us, we can't find it, we can't get it to you in time. There is a cancel ballot affidavit that you can cancel the ballot and vote in person. You can do that from our website if you just are tired of waiting for it and you want to just vote in person. Or if you end up, it's election day and you haven't received it, then you can do that cancel ballot at the polling places. And there's an affidavit that you fill out at the polling place, and then you can vote on the touchscreen there.
Would you have to bring your ballot in?
Well, she's saying if you haven't received it, but if you have received it, that's another option. If you have received it, but you just don't think there's time to get it back in, or you just decided you didn't want to do the absentee ballot, then you can bring the ballot in and it can be canceled by the poll manager, and then you'll be able to vote in person without doing the affidavit. The affidavit is really saying, I've applied, I didn't receive it, and I don't know where it is because I didn't get it. Or I left it at home or in another house because I had to quarantine at some other place, or whatever the reason is.
Okay, so the affidavit will be required, and that means therefore that at advanced voting, neither at advanced voting nor on election day will there be a drop box for ballots.
Okay, so on election day, the same drop box that we have open now will be open through election day until 7 p.m. when polls close. So those drop boxes are available on election day. On the early voting locations, the poll manager can accept a ballot hand delivered. So, we have a drop box here, and this is, going to be open for the first 2 weeks, so that doesn't really apply. But when we open the other 4 locations, they will be able to accept the ballot hand delivered, plus we will have the ballot drop boxes.
Okay, but they won't be able, they will be required to have contact with the manager at the precinct polling locations on election day, right?
Okay, so on election day, if they are bringing in their absentee ballot, they have to cancel it and vote in person. They can drop it in the drop box, but if they bring it to a polling location, an election day polling location, those poll managers cannot accept it. So that is when they would have to cancel it and vote on the machines.
Okay. And that's determined by state code, am I correct?
Yes.
Many of our processes are determined by state code.
That's correct. That's correct. I think you asked something else.
I may have.
Now can't remember.
She also asked if the ballots were going to be accepted after 7.
That's what it was. Okay, so thank you, Brenda. So there has been talk about perhaps accepting absentee ballots that are postmarked by election day, but not yet received in our office until perhaps, Friday afterwards, which is the same rule that we use for the overseas citizens and military, that if it's postmarked on election day but received by Friday, we're able to count it. So there has been discussion about making that also an emergency rule for this election to allow that to happen, or even, I believe there might be a lawsuit about that. That's certainly not something I'm privy to. But if that were to be a rule that we could abide by, then we would, accept whatever comes in the mail from, election day to probably Friday, because that's the same day that we would normally be doing this for UOCAVA.
But at this time, that's not the process.
That's correct.
We'll make that clear.
Right.
It may be, but not yet.
Not yet. There has been discussion about that, but currently we have to receive the absentee ballot in our office by 7 p.m. when the polls close. Now, as far as those drop boxes, that is considered received by us. So what we will have is teams of people out at the drop boxes at 7 p.m. to collect the ballots and lock the box.
Okay, I see a question on the chat. Hey, Brenda, and thank you very much for recording my question. The chat question that I have is, do you have to wait in line at the in-person early voting location to hand deliver your absentee ballot to the poll manager? And I think that probably there needs to be some clarification about, as Daryl asked, exactly where the drop boxes are versus where the early or advanced voting locations are.
Right. So
they're not the same.
Not all of them. Some are. For instance, East Cobb Government Service Center is both a early voting location and a drop box location. So if a person went there, they could put it directly in the drop box and not have to see the poll manager. But if for instance, South Cobb, the early voting location is the Riverside Epicenter, and the drop box is at the South Cobb Government Service Center. So they could drop it in the drop box, or they could go to the Riverside Epicenter, and they would not have to wait in line. They could go in and ask for the poll manager, and then hand that ballot to them.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clear to people who've asked questions about that.
Do you see any other questions? Because I'm not close enough to it to really see.
See it right now. I see 21 participants, so I don't know if we need to give participants an opportunity to.
Well, we're offering questions from the board members right now.
Okay. All right.
You might want to explain, if someone doesn't know, when we talk about the My Voter page or MVP, how they would get to that. You'd have to, of course, use a computer or a phone with internet connection or something. But how do they go to that site to check on their ballot?
Okay, well, it is a website. It's if you Google My Voter page, it comes up, Georgia's My Voter page. It is mvp.sos.ga.gov, and it's off of the Secretary of State's website.
Thank you.
Did you want to ask the other board members if they had anything?
Yes, do any of the other board members, Jessica's had a few questions. She covered everything, so if
Have we?
I just wanted to ask, this
Fred.
is Neera, hello.
Yes, Neera, go ahead.
No, I was just reading the chat, and the person who signed up for public comment, I know the time is over, but she just asking, that was at 4:02. Are we still doing that? So can someone answer that the time was up, or?
Do you want to go ahead and do public?
Since Monica was already signed up, she has spoken before, so I'm familiar with her. We'll allow her to have that time up to the 5 minutes, but she was the only one that signed up, right? Okay, so it's not open for everyone, but if Monica wishes to, we'll let her go ahead at this time, and then we can come back if there are any more board comments.
Well, before you do, I'll just put the link to MVP in the chat for those who want quick access to the website.
Thank you very much.
All right, no problem.
It's on our website too.
It is.
Okay.
Monica.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Got you now.
Okay, thank you. Monica, Nancy, Jean did such a great job explaining it, and Jessica had all of my questions and my concerns about absentee ballots. So thank you for clarifying, because a lot of people did have that concern about not receiving their ballots in time, and could they bring their ballots in to, they were afraid they wouldn't make it back in time. So you did a very good job explaining. Thank you very much. And that was the only thing I wanted to talk about today. And thank y'all very much for the time.
Thank you, Monica. We appreciate your time. Do any of our other board members have any further questions they might have thought of?
I have two more questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Jessica, you.
Two more questions.
That's fine.
I wanted to get clarification on whether it has been officially stated, just because I had, I guess, heard or read at some point that the state may be allowing us to open absentee ballots earlier than normal, earlier than that 4 o'clock time. And the second question has to do with any extensions on certification, where the board is concerned.
Yeah, so the first question about opening ballots early. Currently, we can open them at 7 a.m. on election day if we advertise it and let the parties know that we're doing that. And they are allowed to have monitors during that process. That is a period of time where we would have to be sequestered. Everybody that's involved with that has to be sequestered and can have no contact outside of the office. But the state is looking into, I know the lawyers are looking into perhaps making that happen even earlier with the volume of ballots that we have to open. And as far as I know, that has not happened yet. So we are still working under the current rule, which allows us to open them starting at 7 a.m.
Okay.
That's what we would be doing.
We don't normally start at that early, though, do we?
We have the option of starting anytime before 7 p.m. if we want to, but like I said, we have to advertise for it. And generally speaking, with the volume that we have, we generally say around 3 or 4 in the afternoon.
Okay.
But, we were already planning on doing a 7 a.m. start date for the volume that we have this time. We could use more time. So if that were to happen, we certainly would appreciate that, but it would be almost impossible to sequester people over multiple days. So I'm not sure what the logistics of that is, and we'll have to wait and see what the state says. And then you also mentioned accepting them after. Is that what the other question was?
Well, there was a question accepting them after, I probably based on more on postmark, and I think you answered that. That we don't know what might happen with that. Currently, that is 7 o'clock is our deadline for receiving.
Yes. Right? Currently, in the state of Georgia, we don't look for postmark, except in the fact of the military ballots and the overseas citizens, where if it's postmarked by election day and received by the Friday after election, it can be counted. But that's the only type of ballot that we're looking at postmark. Other than that, it's just if the ballot is in our possession by 7 p.m., then it can be counted.
Okay. And the other question I was asking concerned, I guess, board certification. We have not heard anything about an extension.
Well, board certification was extended in the last session, I think. We generally certify, our board usually meets on the Monday following the election. I think, well, it used to be a holiday, but now we've postponed, so it's not a holiday. But we were going to do it on Wednesday after the election, so a week and a day, to do all of the things that we're going to do to
Wednesday
get ready.
of the week after.
The week following, yeah. But we actually have until Friday of the week following.
Okay.
But we just have never used that time. That was implemented, I think, last session. That's kind of a new rule, and we've really just not really used that time. But this time we had, done a couple of days further out, but we actually have until the Friday if we have to postpone the meeting.
I think I've asked my questions.
Sure, she might think of something else. We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, it is okay. I have a question. What is special about today?
What is special about today, May
Yeah.
11th?
This is the last day to register to vote. If you're not registered in Cobb County as a registered voter and you want to vote in this upcoming election that involves Cobb County candidates, you reside here, you can register it up to midnight.
If you're registering online using the My Voter page or the Oliver, you can go up to midnight, and that's to change your address, update your voter registration, or register brand new. You can do that online up until midnight.
And if you have moved from another county into Cobb County, you are required to change that voter registration, right?
That's correct.
What if you've moved within the county from one South Cobb to North Cobb or whatever?
Well, you're still required to change it to your new location. If you go to the poll and you haven't had time to change it because it's after you've moved after the voter registration date, then you can vote at your old polling place for the first time.
Okay.
But you're required to change it so that you're voting on the right representatives.
Yeah, because your ballot is going to have a particular state representative, state senator,
Right.
and I know right where I live now, right across the main road is a different precinct. And so they have a different ballot over there.
Right.
And so you need to have the correct one. And I urge everybody to, when they do get it, especially if you get an absentee ballot where you got plenty of time to look it over. And if you don't, go online. My voter page will have a link that you can see. The sample ballot will be just like the one that you either get absentee or at the polls. There may be extra questions on it you're not aware of, depending on your party. And there are a lot of candidates, particularly a lot of judges. I'm going to have to be doing research on these judges. That's one reason I haven't voted mine yet. Some of the others I know pretty well where there's only one or two choices. But at least one of those judge races has like 5 or 6 people in it. So that's all I had on that.
Okay. All right.
All right. Anybody else have any further questions?
Yes.
Yeah, everything's been covered.
Get
I
anything
think
else?
Darren said.
Oh, Darryl has one. Go ahead.
So in the event that someone moves within the county and they need to change their address, they can go on to our website.
It would be the My Voter page.
Right.
It has a place for registering, and then you indicate that it's a change or a new registration.
Right. But the link to my voter page is on our website.
Yes, we do have it in there.
But if you use a search engine such as Google, then you can just put in MVP and a little space and GA for Georgia, and I think it will bring up the My Voter page link for you. That's the simple way I remember it. And you can, if you have a smartphone that you use, you can put that on your main screen. And then all you got to do after that is just tap it and you're there. But you still got to put in your name and their birthday and so forth.
Thank you for answering my question.
Yeah. Okay. All right, then. Our next item on our agenda then is to go to our elections manager, Brenda Jameson. She's going to talk about our polling locations.
Okay. Hello, everybody.
Oh.
Well, since the pandemic, we have reached out to each of our 144 polls, and just this past week, we did have one poll, Mount Zion United Methodist Church, that is advising us that due to their bishop, the guidance of their bishop and the North Georgia Conference, that they're being advised to keep the church closed, and they're not going to be able to participate as an election day polling place. Thankfully, that's just the one that we've gotten, so far. Others are we are fielding questions from them and, assuring them or giving them information about how we intend to conduct the election. So far, the rest are still in with us. But with that will require an emergency temporary change in a polling place that we will have coming up to you as soon as we can. We have been able to locate a polling place that's right very near the one that we're losing, and they have agreed to have a combined polling place there at Dodgen 01. So we're making preparations to place the ads and call a meeting for you guys to review.
So is that going to reduce it? So we'll have 143 locations then?
No, we will still have 144. At this point, our goal is to keep that precinct intact, and we would just have 2 separate precincts at the one location.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And for that location, since you said 2 separate precincts, so that's Dodgen 01, and what would be the second one combined?
Dodgen 01, and the other one will be Roswell 02.
Roswell 02. Thank you.
What is that new location?
The new location is one of our newer polling places. It's the Episcopal Church of St. Peter and St. Paul.
That's right across the street.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
So there will be more information to come with all the information that you guys need to consider.
And that's the only one.
Hope so.
Hopefully.
All right. Did you have anything else, Brenda?
I think that's it. I don't know, Janine, if you wanted me to speak on the poll workers.
If you have some information on that, yes, that'd be great.
Okay. Insofar as the poll workers, we don't have concrete numbers as of this date. The area supervisors are in the process of going back and contacting all poll workers to see if they are still going to work the election. Prior to the pandemic, we were looking to have on the average of 10 to 11 workers per poll, basically. But that number at last count had dropped substantially. That was still going to be available. And of course, our largest challenge would be those poll managers or assistant managers that would no longer be able to work. After the initial evaluation, many of the workers have said that they need to wait closer to the election before they can make a commitment. So now we are out basically as far as we can, and we need to know if they're gonna commit or not. Some of the workers, of course, those that are 65 and older, are kind of concerned because the order is to be lifted, I think, like after June 12th, if they are 65 years and older, and that includes a large number of our population. Some have been, of course, reassured that, you know, because of our process that we're planning to do with providing masks and gloves and hand sanitizer, you know, some are gonna stick with us if they can. So, but we're feeling like we're close to bare bones at a lot of places, especially with managers and assistant managers. And that's all I have.
All right, I would like to mention and commend all of the people that we have that are these poll workers. You mentioned area supervisors, and if I understand, you have a certain number of area supervisors, and each one of those supervises a certain number of poll managers. Then the poll managers, of course, supervise at their polling location those people that work there. And all of these people have to go through classes each time elections come up, because election procedures and laws change. And of course, this last year, we had this new voting equipment too that they've had to be trained on. And I appreciate all of these people that have shown up who do that. They get paid some, but it's not much. They're having to put in at least a 12-hour day, not including training that they have to have and ahead of time on that. So I want to commend them for that. And as you mentioned, a lot of these are people that are able to come and work part-time like this, and a lot of them are retired people or who want to take vacation time and come do this. And that's a strong commitment to make on their commitment to their citizenship, and I want to say I appreciate that. I'm sure our other board members agree with that.
Mm-hmm. We do.
All right, I'd like to mention one other thing, if I could clarify.
Yes, and then I have one more thing as well.
Well, we'll let you.
I just noticed there was a chat on here that says on May 4th, there were 160,000 applications submitted to Cobb elections. They had only processed 103,000. Today, Ms. Ebler is telling us they have processed 123,000. I just want to talk about the estimating. You know, we were estimating how many we were receiving based on the number of mail trays of applications and other mail that was being sent in. And some of our estimating, you know, wasn't accurate and wasn't really scientific. What we were doing is really saying that a stack of them are this thick and there's 7 different stacks in this tray, it's probably 700. You know, 100 is this thick, that's about 100. So it wasn't, you know, it was our best guess. We were receiving, you know, trays and trays of mail. And we also were receiving, we had a backlog of emails with applications, and you don't know if you have 6,000 emails, does each one have one application in it, or is it a family that has 5 in it? So there was really not a good scientific way of estimating. And so, you know, the number that we gave out at the point, I guess, the May 4th was 160,000. We don't really have a backlog other than, like I said, there's about 8,000 of the elderly and disabled that have come in that we're getting through those out fairly quickly. But that would get us to 131.
Okay.
You know, so that doesn't get us up to the 160. But we were doing our best when all of the trays and trays of mail were coming, and we had a large backlog to try and quantify that. And then, you know, where the comment is also on there about voters are telling us that they're 3 to 4 weeks from their submit application to receiving the ballot. That is where we were at the beginning, because we had a huge response from the applications that were sent out by the state and by us. And so everybody was sending in their application all at once, and we got behind. But we are not at that point right now. And the 123 plus 8 that is still in process, plus the daily churn of about 3,000 or 4,000 each day is about where we are right now. And we're turning those around, like I said, within at least 2 days. That's all I have.
Yes, one of the other things I wanted to mention, Janine has mentioned a couple of times about this elderly and disabled. And in case you're wondering what that's about, when I got my absentee ballot application, it had a space down on the form to check if you were over 65, or if you would say be elderly, or if you're disabled. And if you checked one of those, or checked that mark that you qualify on that, then you can get your absentee. You don't have to keep reapplying each time this year. If you didn't check that, then you would have to reapply if there's a runoff on this primary, or if there's a runoff on the general election. However, if you check that, then they will enter that. And that's why she's saying they have to pay special attention and separate those, because they have to know if it's going to go on the list of those that are going to be automatically sent out. If there's a runoff on this primary, if there's a runoff in the general election, then if you check that mark on there, you don't have to reapply. If you've already done that and checked it, you'll get that.
Right, right. We call that our rollover list.
Okay.
So that's just kind of our name for that. It rolls over each election.
That's very helpful, but that's just for this election season.
It's for the cycle, right? So it would go all the way through the January 2021 runoff for federal races if we have one.
That's right. Okay. And I would like to comment also, I know I mentioned a while ago these poll workers that are working at the polls. And I would like to also commend Janine and her staff and the organization that they've had in handling all these absentee ballots. Because our normal absentee ballot level is 40-something thousand a year.
That would be a very, very high response normally. Our highest ever is 44,000. And normally in this kind of a race, maybe a couple thousand, 2, 3, 4,000.
And now we're talking about the hundreds of thousands, right? And they're having to handle this. So one thing they had to do was to find additional space. Here in our elections office, there's just so much floor space, and you're trying to space people apart far enough that because of this virus situation, that Janine acquired the use of some space at Jim Miller Park and the exhibit halls there where they could be spread out enough, and set up one area to be opening the applications when they came in, and have another one to be processing and so forth, and adjusting it as needed. And it's just been a huge undertaking, and I really appreciate the job that she and the staff have done on that one.
Thank you, Chairman.
Sure.
I second that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. If there are no other board comments, then our next scheduled board meeting will be June the 9th at 7 p.m. And that is, of course, the day of the primary. And we will have some of our board members will be meeting here. And then on June 17th at 12 p.m., that's our certification date.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the time we'll be meeting to certify. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, have that. And I'll second that.
Okay.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Sounds like a majority. So we're adjourned, and we will see our board members June 9th. Thank everyone for participating, and all
Thank you.
chat members and Monica. Thank you.